much as I can. I'm going through an injury right now, but I should be fine. First of all, I'm going to start off with a word I hope you're familiar with. Wakanda. By the way, is this loud enough? Can you guys hear me? I want you to hear me. Wakanda is the highly developed and technologically advanced African nation, and the setting of the blockbuster movie Black Panther, which is a community enriched with strengths, assets, foundational contributions by both men and women. It's driven by ancient values and wisdom, but the challenge of the movie Black Panther is to guard the source of its power for the use of greater good. But Wakanda is a mythical land. We know it doesn't exist, yet it represents a story often told in literature and film. We are introduced to a fantasy land, a fantasy hero with superpowers capable of withstanding all evil forces and saving the world. Why was Black Panther celebrated as one of the most influential movies this past year? Because it portrayed an image that had never been seen. That of a highly developed and technologically advanced African nation. Hold on to that thought, because if no one had ever seen a highly developed African nation, what was the image that we all carried along about any African nation? And more significantly, this conversation today challenges you to think about how we choose to decide what is normal, what is the model, what is the example of what we choose to be standard. In the 21st century, we live in a digital world defining the standards of identity, behavior, thoughts, and values. Therefore, the truth has become, to be me, you have to see me. You cannot become something that you do not see. We all need images of individuals who look like us, who come from similar backgrounds or gender. It inspires us to evolve and create our own personal standard. But what happens when those images are limited or non-existent, or they carry negative stereotypes? When other influences are perceived as more attractive, we will reject the stereotypical images and choose to adopt images of others around us. The same thing occurs in our behavior, in our attitude, and our beliefs. Well, welcome to the world of the National Hispanic Institute, an organization co-founded by my husband, Ernesto Nieto, and myself. For the past 40 years, no other organization has devoted more energy to studying the future of Latino leadership. Today's presentation asks you to evaluate the implications of images that define the Latino community. In particular, it will challenge you to shift that imposed stereotype of a minority and frame the world where Latino is standard. And let me tell you why it's important. I grew up in the Texas Rio Grande Valley. I'm from McAllen. And so I didn't grow up as a minority. I was constantly surrounded by people who looked, spoke, and acted like me. And moving to Austin in 1976 was my culture shock. I was told I didn't fit the image of what a Mexican-American woman should be. I was educated, articulate, and bilingual. They couldn't understand why I had to drive 600 miles every other weekend to spend time and every single holiday with my family. I realized that people from the Valley are different. And as NHI expanded around the country, I came across so many individuals from the Texas Rio Grande Valley who were professors, elected officials, and community leaders. And you know what? They were really different. They were by far the most outstanding individuals in their corner of the world. Seriously, They were active, outgoing, successful, encouraging, embracing, como se dice, pura buena gente. My husband Ernesto Nieto says that I have a RGV GPS. Because if you are from the RGV, I'm going to track you down. Because I love finding people that are from my home and are like me. I just love my peeps. But I also found the reverse in my travel. The further away from the valley, I found that even though people came from sizable regions where Latinos were in large numbers, they still referred to themselves as minorities. And somehow, as I would talk to them and they would explain what's going on, they seemed to feel like the term minority defined a person's perception to be somehow lesser than or not equal to. I questioned why being a minority became the determinant of why people excluded themselves and how it became ingrained in them to practice being excluded. That was the excuse. We inferred, believed, Latino was synonymous with being a minority, and that to be Latino was in a way to be lesser than, certainly not equal to. Was that the standard by which we led our lives? Was this the virus that was affecting our community to believe that we should define ourselves as substandard? Well, in my life work, my challenge was to question, was it reasonable to believe that if one accepts a minority status, it perpetuates a marginal existence? I have always had faith that the world would continue to change. And the solution through the National Hispanic Institute was to grow a new generation of educated, ambitious, inspiring, influential leaders. To begin with, we determined the story we wanted to live. Do we want to live a story of incapacitation, disability, marginalization, or could we become the makers, the standard of a brave new world? Let me share a few bits and pieces of the world that we lived in when NHI was founded. In the 1980s, we were founded in 1979, the U.S. Department of Education put out a report called A Nation at Risk. It predicted that for every 100 U.S. Hispanic children that would enter kindergarten in any given year, 5 out of 100 were expected to graduate from high school. It predicted that 1 out of every 100 would graduate from college. Those numbers angered me. How could this great country called the United States of America predict the success and failure of an entire generation of students before they ever step inside a classroom? And by the way, figure it out. The 1980s report was talking about your parents. So you can imagine what they had, the expectations they had for your grandparents. Second, my cousin Edward De Leon attended Texas Boys State in 1980. Among the 600 young men that attended, I found 12 Spanish surnames in the roster. When the Hispanic population at the time was 3 million, representing 21% of the population, Texas Boys State was training 2%. And that's when Ernie and I decided, you know what, we're going to do our own. We're gonna get 200 kids a year, and now it's many more. And that was the impetus to start the Lorenzo de Zavala Youth Legislative Session. I refer to these points to exemplify NHI's choice. In lieu of anger or criticism, we chose to take a proactive approach. We challenged ourselves to change the narrative. In order to alter the trajectory of a community, we needed to change ourselves. We refused to believe in any stereotypical reference of Latinos. We knew Latinos did not lack the skill or intelligence to compete at the highest level of competition. We lacked the platforms and the environments to flourish. We were not a docile, dominated, unquestioning community. In fact, we have thrived and survived because of our strong character, values, and resiliency. And if you grew up with a strong mom or grandma, you know that we respected and encouraged both men and women to assume strong leadership roles. I know from my experience, because mi mamá me enseñó a trabajar y luchar. And if there was one myth that I personally wanted to refute and erase, it was the jealous crab story. No, Latinos by nature do not drag each other down. We will work together. We will applaud and support each other. Like my favorite line in the Optimist Creed, in NHI, we would be just as enthusiastic of the support of others as we are of our own. Thus, the mission of the National Hispanic Institute is to nurture the intellectual leadership of the Latino community through its most capable youth. It crafts the new standard, an understanding of life in the Latino community for the 21st century. It conveys an image and a view of a futuristic, emerging Latino community. Connected to the community is emotional, psychological, and intellectually ingrained. It gives new meaning to life in the Latino community. And it asks top Latino youth nationwide and internationally to become active and visible in chasing the new, in shaping the new community standard. The question before us was to find the source of inspiration. And for me, it was obvious. We needed to create a world where Latino is standard, a world where minorities do not exist. We needed, and there was only one possible inspiration for me. It was the Texas Rio Grande Valley. And the program that I designed, the Lorenzo de Zavala Youth Legislative Session, known as the LDZ, recreated this beautiful world. It was a world where everyone looked like me, where every student was encouraged, applauded, embraced to exceed expectations. We expected everyone to give their best to earn their elected positions and awards based on merit, not popularity. And it was magical. The tears at the end of the program attest to what I remember as a child growing up. The love, the innocence, the freedom to be who I wanted to be without judgment. And today I am so proud to tell you that this program has been recreated over 200 times with 200 LDZs across the United States, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Panama. And is the primary reason why NHI considers itself a national and has a national and international presence. The results were to inject a new set of beliefs. In the world of LDZ and NHI, there are no minorities. It is a world where English and Spanish are spoken interchangeably, members come from all sectors of society, and the admission qualifier is academics. Ascension, the pathway to emerge as a leader, is not restricted only to males. As a matter of fact, the first female LDZ governor in 1985 was Sandy Castellanos from Weslaco. I shamelessly tell you that the RGV has the largest number of awards from any single region in the country in countless programs of NHI. For students who introduce themselves from a small town you've probably never heard of, in 2019, where the RGV is the most recognized region in the country. Not to mention, it has become the most highly recruited region for college-bound students for national students nationwide, for national universities nationwide. And for those of you who thought that women should stay home and not allowed to go out of state for college, NHI women have proved different. From the very beginning, in the 1980s, young women started going out of state at a rate of 3 to 1. Am I almost out of time? Okay, am I out of time? Okay, let me, okay, good, okay, I just have a couple more things. I'll wrap it up. Most of you might not remember the whole world freaking out at the end of the Aztec calendar. What did it mean? Was the world going to end? There were so many rumors, and people were hiding under their beds, getting rid of their possessions, saying goodbye to loved ones. I mention this because it's so important to understand the difference between the literal and the symbolic. The calendar year end date was 2012, but it was not the end of the world. It was the end of an era, and it predicted that for the remaining of the 21st century, things we never thought possible would be possible. I'm asking you to consider that thought. What would happen if Latinos refuse to accept that we're not minorities? What if instead we accepted Latino as the standard? Something others should emulate and follow. And so, in conclusion, I'm just going to go ahead and go on to the conclusion. The Rio Grande Valley is and can be the inspiration for the ever-evolving United States of America. In this special place we call home, we find all the markers of success. We practice dual multiple citizenship in the world. We are bilingual, bicultural, international. We have a young and dynamic population that is growing up to be the most educated generation we have ever known. We have experience in governance at every level. I'm asking you, every single one of you, to embrace Latino as standard. I believe it's reasonable to believe that we can value and create a distinct identity that others will want to grow by. And we can be part of redefining and reasserting the RGV as the model for modeling the type of innate strengths and talents that we all possess. The National Hispanic Institute, hold on, I'm just going to go ahead and skip ahead, hold on. Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and skip because I don't want to take up too much time. Let me bring it back to the Black Panther. In the movie The Black Panther, Wakanda was the highly evolved, technically advanced future community. Take a look at the Rio Grande Valley. Let's acknowledge our reality. We do not live as minorities. Hispanics represent 80% of the population. We have the largest concentration of high school and college-educated Latinos living here. We are represented in every level, and we're bilingual and speak the most coveted languages in the world, English and Spanish. The Rio Grande Valley already represents a new standard and promise. We speak the language of the future and carry a range of cultural and ethnic DNAs. In the mythical land of Wakanda in the Black Panther, the key to the strength and the superhuman ability came in the shape of a heart-shaped herb called verbena. I think each and every one of you born in the Texas Rio Grande Valley ingests a heart-shaped herb that gives us some very special abilities. We love our culture, we love our community, and it is this love that is the equalizer of all of us we have to encounter. As you grow and find your place in the world, I ask you to boldly carry the ages and across the world the very essence of who you are. Don't try to change it. Love who you are. Love and support someone who looks around you all over the world. To change the narrative, be the true example of our strength going forward. I ask you, be real, be you, embrace and represent Latino as standard.